Hello and welcome. This is Ranting Politics, and we are reading Space Relations by Donald Barr. Today we'll be looking at Part 3, Section 21. The three lay prone, side by side, on the crest of the ridge. Craig on the right, and just far enough separated so that he could bring the laser rifle into play against the others if necessary. They were all screened, thinly, by patches of gorse. The drizzle had ceased. The sky was an even white. Below them, the logger was full of scurryings and tramplings. The pit head at the near end hid much of the central street. Craig could, however, see slaves carrying stretchers, and what appeared to be a neat row of corpses in gray slave uniforms. The commandant, then, had cleared the mine, though not quite soon enough. 4 towers stood outside the perimeter fence, one at each corner. Each was a simple guard cabin mounted on a tapering open-work structure inside of which was the slender tube of a lift. "We can assume," said Dr. Corey, "that he is in one of the 2 nearer towers, if he is doing what your ladyship thinks he is." The lady said, "Too bad the rain has stopped." Craig, "You mean he would have a body heat gun sight?" The lady, "Yes, they have them." Craig, "In that case, back!" The shrub to the left of the doctor burst explosively into flame. All 3 threw themselves backward and scuttled away until the top of the hill cut them off from the side of the towers. The doctor's face was mottled but impassive. The lady, "That's proof for you, doctor. And that was good shooting, at a half kilometer." Craig, "Did your ladyship see which tower it came from?" The lady, "The left, I think." Dr. Corey, "I thought it was the right." Craig, "I couldn't tell. The doctor would be the most visible on a body heat scope. Not that your ladyship's temperature is anything to sneer at, but there's more of him. I don't think we have very long. Our friend can just bring up a little mortar or 2 and lay a barrage right on us. Or he can take up a skimmer and strafe us." The lady, "What other good ideas have you got?" Craig, "Those should suffice. As I say, the doctor is too good a target. Besides, his professional services— you are a physician, I take it— splendid— will be needed in the logger. You, my lady, could deal with our friend if you could get into the logger. I don't think he's going to ask any free man to turn a gun on Lady Morgan Sidney. On the other hand, if I get you into the logger, you might persuade them to turn a gun on me. On the third hand, if I got you into the logger, I could use the doctor as a hostage for your good behavior. I take it you are fond of the doctor in your own way. Good. I will get you into the logger." The lady, "If you had one more hand, I could have you killed later anyway." Craig, "I might just have 2 more hands, my lady. Your ladyship must make me one promise. Please have his corpse thrown from the tower. That will be our signal that the doctor can come down safely, with me behind him. I'm sorry, but you won't have time to dose the commandant with those drugs." The lady, "I promise." Craig, "I suggest, my lady, that you swing wide around the left. Move behind the crest till you see me create a diversion on the right. Watch the towers as closely as you can. If you can tell which one he's firing from, head for the base of that one. Doctor, sit back here. I'll call you when I need you. There seem to be 8 charges left in this laser. I'll save one for you, Doctor. My lady, kindly lend me your hat. Time to move, my lady. Keep your ladyship's head down." Craig and the girl ran off, bending low, in opposite directions. Craig threw himself on his stomach and crawled nearer the crest. He looked to his left. Her ladyship had done likewise and was watching him. He put the helmet on the ground to his left and nudged it toward the crest with the snout of his laser carbine, holding the weapon at arm's length. There was the snort and a crackle of flame a few centimeters to one side of the helmet. Craig quickly jerked the helmet into cover with the front side of the weapon. He repeated the maneuver on his right side. This time, a charred groove opened on the helmet's side. The Commandant was a crack shot, when he had time to aim. He might, however, have been fooled for a few moments into thinking that the lady was where Craig was. Craig left the helmet on the ground, doubled into a runner's crouch, and catapulted over the brow of the hill. He ran as the hopeless fugitive at the spaceport had run, zigzagging wildly. He dropped to one knee, aimed at the left-hand tower, loosed a shot at the embrasure, lunged sideways, rolled over, and ran back toward the shelter of the hilltop. 2 ray bolts in succession struck near him. He glanced over toward the lady. She was over the crest and running steadily, crouching and swerving in a wide arc among the shrubs. She was committed. He would continue the diversion. He whirled and plunged downhill again, loosing another shot, this time at the right-hand tower. Under cover of a tumbling fall, he glanced at the girl. She was looking at him and raised her left hand. So it was the left-hand tower. And she had signaled him on her own. He had not asked her to. He danced off toward the right and threw himself into a gully that gave him partial cover. Several bolts seared the ground near him, one passing over his head. At any moment, the marksman in the tower would think of widening the ray gun aperture, crippling him with a spray, and then finishing him off. He checked his own weapon, stood up coolly, put a shot into the embrasure, and dropped back into cover. The enemy did not reply for a few moments, and then his next shot struck a meter away. Craig wriggled down the gully and fired, lying on his side. He saw the streak of flame from the embrasure, and a fraction of a second later heard the snapping howl of the ray, but no bolt struck near him. He turned, saw smoke gush from the vetch at the crest of the hill, and saw the top of the helmet bobbing rapidly along nearby. The doctor was making a contribution. The girl was running erect now, her legs twinkling, her fists clenched. Craig stood up again and squeezed off 3 more shots at the tower. He had 1 left, which he had said was for the doctor. The enemy turned his fire back on Craig. 2 bolts were short. The third grazed his left shoulder. Searing pain blinded him for a moment. He shook his head clear, forced the laser carbine into position, aimed meticulously, and fired his last shot. He drove back into the gully. The jar made his left shoulder blaze with agony. He looked for the girl. She was near the tower now, but still in the field of fire if the enemy should look her way. The Commandant, however, had now thought of widening the aperture of his weapon, and began raying Craig's gully systematically from the upper end. Craig scuttled down the gully and, reaching the end, picked himself up and ran to another, hoping it would be deeper. It was, slightly so. The girl was under the tower now, and colloguing with some guards inside the wire. Craig watched intently. The guards seemed too puzzled at first to take orders, but they began at last to move. It was some time before it dawned on Craig that the firing from the tower had stopped. A party of guards disappeared into a hatchway and reappeared a moment later outside the wire, next to the lift tube of the tower. This they entered, the lady following. A few seconds passed, and then a black-clad body was slowly extruded from the embrasure of the tower, and fell, end over end, 100 meters to the ground. The spherical figure of Corey rose majestically from behind the crest of the hill, still holding the helmet aloft on a long twig. Craig rose to go meet him, staggered, fell, and stood up again. The doctor looked at the tower, and then at Craig and walked over to Craig. He peered silently at Craig's shoulder. "Come," he said. "Lean on me." All right, and that was section 21. Now we are on to part 3, section 22. They found the logger in confusion. The lady had taken personal command. More than this, no one seemed to know. A guard, an incurious pro-Siamese, said, "She was here a minute ago. Try headquarters." Craig and the doctor set out for headquarters. The loudspeakers on the corners of buildings intoned the names of missing free men. Billy Montero, report if alive. Paul Ostroff, report if alive. An overseer stood doing nothing. "Have I seen her? Where do you think I got this?" "With my own cat, that was. She stands right the hell in front of my ground car. I stop. She asks for it, please. I say no trip slip, no car. She asks for my cat, please. I hand it over. She gives me one in the face with it, pulls me off the seat, and goes off with my cat and my car. Where? How should I know?" Crews along the muddy streets were listing dead slaves and sealing them in long green sacks. MS 33621, MS 29388, MS 31115. What am I supposed to do? They got no left arm. Put down no number then. MS 41992, MS 50191. Did I see who? Well, a car went by. Went by all right. Splashed mud all over the stiffs. Oh, that was her. It's all right then. I mean, it's her mud and her stiffs, isn't it? MS 44022. "Let us stop in here," said the doctor. Inside the guard barracks, 2 crews were at work. Aunt was identifying the corpses of overseers and guards. "That's the 3rd Alois Schmeiser you've positively identified, you moron." They were preparing them for shipment in neatly tagged black sacks. Then they reopened the sacks to argue, bellowing, "Shut up! Have some respect!" The other crew was trying to care for injured freemen. Dr. Corey moved professionally along the row of beds, looking and palpating, snapping orders in his castrato voice. The team had an aid kit. Dr. Corey cleaned and disinfected Craig's burnt shoulder and sprayed a temporary skin on it. An overseer with a broken arm said, "I saw her. Outside in a ground car." "Which way?" "Let me see. To the pit head, I think." At the pit head, a team of engineers tried to jury-rig an emergency pumping system. "You can't pull water, fathead. You gotta push it." "What do you figure to do? Stand at the end of a 60-meter hose and say, 'Here, wada. Excuse me?' 'Yes, the little lady's right here.' Oh, well, she was. Now, what you do is drill." The lift, ridden by 2 men in diving suits, ascended with 4 drowned slaves, and descended again. The operator, a wizened old Syrian, cackled and said, "I just left." She wanted to go down the hole, but the diving suit wouldn't fit. Some places it was too large, and some places it was too small. He cackled. "Bye. Come again." The loudspeakers in the street. "Guard Lieutenant Wesley Monk, report if alive. Billy Montero, report if alive. Paul Ostroff, report if alive." Craig said, "There's the ground car, down there, way down by G." The street level of Barracks G was full of injured and half-drowned slaves, attended by one old slave who sobbed incessantly. At the far end of the dim, long room, a huddled red shape unfolded over a pallet and stood disconsolately to face them. Her ladyship had put an officer's dress scarlet tunic, much too large for her, on over her ragged suit, and belted it tightly with an officer's wide black true leather belt mounting a huge, glossy holster. Her face was still smudged, her hair damp. As they came up to her, she said, "This one is a little boy." I think he's still alive. I was trying to make him breathe." She bent over the young slave and pressed her open mouth to his face. "It is coming out of his nose," said Dr. Corey critically. "Let me see him, please." The lady stood aside. "No cyanosis," he said. "He must have been breathing when they brought him out. Quite recently. Perhaps when they dumped him here. I think we can start him up again. He busied himself." "Oh, Corey. What am I to do with this?" the girl said. She wheeled on the old slave. "You! Stop sniveling, goddamn you! Where are the others? Who's in charge?" A fresh spat of sobs and hiccups was the answer. Craig said, "My lady, let me try. He might tell me, slave to slave, you know." She watched him with hard, bright eyes as he walked over to the old slave and put an arm over the trembling shoulders. "You were in the mine when it happened?" The old slave nodded, and a drop of fluid fell from the tip of his nose. "So was I," said Craig. "It was awful." "They brought you here." The slave nodded. "You were out. Unconscious." "Nod." "Where were you lying when you woke up?" The slave pointed at an empty pallet. "Were there any guards here?" Shake of the head. "Overseers?" Another negative. "Medics?" Shake of the head. "So you got up and tried to take care of things?" Nod. "You used to be an MT?" Shake of the head. "MD?" Negative. "Teacher?" Nod. "I'll bet you were a good teacher." Nod. A racking sob. "You don't have to answer this now. I won't tell anybody if you do, though. Did anybody die while you were in charge?" The old slave turned and buried his face in Craig's burned shoulder. Craig closed his eyes and stiffened with the pain, but put his arms gently around the old man. "Who was it?" The old man looked up searchingly into Craig's face, then pointed to a pallet nearby. "Oh, he probably was dead already when they brought him here." "I'm sure he was." "Doctor," Craig called over to Dr. Corey, who had finished with his young patient. "Would you examine that patient, please, and tell us, did he die here, or was he dead when he came?" The doctor bent over the indicated figure, stood up, and looked steadily at Craig. "Why, he is not dead," he said. "He's just unconscious." He joined Craig. "But you, young fellow," he said to the aged slave, "you will be pretty sick if you do not at once lie down and stay quiet. I am in charge here now, so you just take it easy." He helped Craig guide the old man, sniffling, to his pallet. Craig knelt beside the pallet and stared into the old slave's face. "You're going to go to sleep now. You're terribly tired, after taking care of all those patients. You'll wake up in the morning feeling much better." Nod. The vague, reddened eyes closed. Craig and the doctor looked at each other. Both looked at the lady. She walked slowly over. Craig and the doctor went to the pallet containing the dead man, and, while the lady leaned over the sleeping slave to block his view if he should open his eyes, silently manhandled it to the side of the room, they picked up a pallet with a groaning slave in it and put it in the place of the other. Craig whispered to the lady, "I'll take it to your ladyship's ground car, and you can leave it with the bag stuffers on the street." She nodded, still with that intent look. Craig slung the corpse over his right shoulder, carried it to the car, and returned. Re-entering quietly, he heard the lady say, "Don't be taken in by that insolent tenderness. He's just like me." Warned by Dr. Corey's glance, she went on, "I'm going to headquarters. You and the slave can see to things here for a while. I'll send somebody down. Then you can report to headquarters. And bring the slave, and I'll decide what to do with him." When the lady had gone, Dr. Corey said, "Lie down for a minute." Craig lay down on the pallet from which he had removed the corpse a few moments before. The doctor examined him. "Superficially," he said, "you are a terrible mess. Your right foot is contused, Both feet are deeply scratched, and there's much dirt in the lacerations. Fortunately, most of the bacteria of Kosar have not yet acquired a taste for human tissue. Your left shoulder is burned, and the temporary skin I put on is of poor quality. You are filthy. You are suffering from fatigue. You are, however, in the best of health. You are not only in the best of health, but still alive. Craig, I take your meaning. Dr. Corey, frankly, I am not sure how long this state of affairs will continue. Her ladyship told me just now that the commandant was already dying when she and the guards reached him. You grasp the significance? You must have wounded him fatally with one of your 8 shots. Thus you pose a dilemma. You save her ladyship's life, yet you, a slave, killed one of her officers. You will perhaps argue that the first fact should outweigh the second. Craig, I think I could undertake to defend that position, paradoxical as it might seem at first. Dr. Corey, no, I am serious. You see, there is something else. Something in your manner. Craig, perhaps I was meant for something better than slavery. Dr. Corey, who meant you? Well, that is as it may be. This something. Her ladyship called it insolence. Craig, insolent tenderness. Don't forget the tenderness. Dr. Corey smiled sadly. You heard. So, let me explain. Once a slave starts killing free men for a good reason, he may, so to speak, generalize. He may then kill for a reason that is not only nearly as good, and then for a questionable reason, and eventually he may kill on some quite far-fetched analogy. He may start by killing a Commandant John Fentriss, but he may end by killing a Lady Morgan Sidney. He may lose sight of the difference. And this something of yours. But if, and here the high voice faltered, if her ladyship decides to use one of the punishment drugs on you, I will say to her I have none left. That will only delay things, of course. However, if you then wish me to... Craig. Thank you. I'll let you know. Dr. Corey, her ladyship explicitly ordered me not to have you cleaned up. She said you stank like a ferret. Now, for certain reasons, I think that that is a good sign, though I have never smelt a ferret. Craig, don't feel bad, Doctor. Your old-fashioned ferret smeller belongs to a vanishing breed. But I really do thank you. And you are right about killing. Somebody or other once wrote, "Nothing is so pregnant as cruelty." Shall we look at our patients? The 2 hangdog technicians appeared a few minutes later, and Dr. Corey braced them with a rattle of instructions. All right, that was the end of section 22. A bit of a shorter section this time around. Yeah, I think I've read like 30 pages of this over the last 4 days, so I'm a little burnt out. I'm probably going to take a little break. Hopefully not 2 months long. But, we'll see how that turns out. I appreciate you watching, and I hope you have a nice day. This is Ranting Politics. Take care.